Hi everybody. We're going to get started, and how about that keynote today, huh? There was some pretty cool stuff. Awesome. And I bet you want to find out a little bit more about a couple features called Photoshop and Illustrator import. So basically, we're going to spend the next 20 minutes, and I'm going to show you how you can take your assets created in Adobe Creative Suite, in Blend, and make some really great user experiences. That's me. I love designers. I love designers because they make great user interfaces. They make great experiences. And that's what this is really all about. So before we jump right into the workflow, what I want to talk about is, what is the current workflow like? What are the problems with it? Why did we add this import feature in the first place? So how many of you out there have used Adobe products to create assets for Silverlight and WPF applications? All right, that's quite a few, right? So I'll bet that that experience was not quite as smooth as you'd like it to be. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's consider the current issues with working with assets, say, in an Adobe Photoshop file. So I'm a designer, got my assets, they're all in layers, so I'm going to export each of my layers as an individual PNG file. Fantastic. So then I'm going to bring them into my application, and I want to position them to match my comp. Well, that's actually really difficult, because the positions that show up in Photoshop and Illustrator don't match what I need to put for Silverlight and WPF because they use relative coordinates. So I can recompute all the numbers in my head, try to figure it out, and type in the layout properties. Or I can forget about that and just redo my whole layout in Blend. Not ideal, but okay, I'm working. And then I notice the size of my image isn't quite right. I'm like, oh. And that's because my Photoshop file is using a resolution of 72 pixels per inch. But Silverlight and WPF use 96. Okay, I'm getting a little more frustrated, but now I've got my assets in the right position, the right location. So now I realize I've got this great vector artwork that I did in my comp that I want to use. It's going to be a scalable, interactive application. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, I can recreate those vector assets in Blend. But you know what? I just realized my deadline's tomorrow. I don't have any more time. So I say, forget about it. I gave up on the whole thing, and I just used comps. I just used bitmap PNGs. Okay. So the big problem with all of this is that I'm not able to make as good of a user experience as I could have if I had taken full advantage of the platform. And that's really kind of the whole point. So how can we make this better? We just made it a lot easier for you to get your assets in and create some really great user experiences. Not only did we add the Photoshop and Illustrator import, but we made the import process really, really flexible so that you can make the most out of your assets to create those really great applications. So as you know, we've been talking about great design and what are the different elements of great design. And it includes not just well-designed assets, well-defined graphics. It includes dynamic animation. It includes innovative interaction techniques. It includes really great feedback. So in the keynote today, actually, I forgot to load that up. In the keynote today, we saw an application. I'm going to just pop that up quickly, and so we can have another quick look at it. And this application really showed a lot of those different kinds of effects that we're talking about. It has animation. It has good feedback, interaction. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at that application. And then we're going to take that Photoshop file, and we're going to bring it into Blend. And we're going to go a little bit further than what they showed in the keynote. So let's just go ahead and do that. I don't know. Oh, goodness. Thank you. Sorry about that. OK, we're back. OK, so here's the application they showed in the keynote. And right away, as they were talking in the keynote, this application, it draws you in. It's dynamic. It responds to me. I'm not going to go over all the things. It has great transitions. It uses really interesting feedback, interaction. Fantastic. So let's dive into that file a little bit more. Here it is in Photoshop. You can see this uses a few layers. They're all named according to my naming conventions. They have vector shapes, text, bitmap images. I'm even utilizing some masks over here. I'm utilizing not only vector masks, but some opacity masks as well. So what I'm going to do is now take this file, go into Blend, and import it. So right now I'm in a Silverlight application. I'm going to say import Adobe Photoshop file, select my Photoshop file, and hit open. So then we get that import dialog that we saw earlier today and John was talking about. It's loading up my files. I'm going to go over a few extras that he didn't go over today in the keynote. So there must be something with this particular setup because it doesn't usually take this long. Oh, I know what it is. Sorry. OK. So here I am. I've got my Photoshop dialog. As you saw, it updates in real time. It's an interactive preview, so you can see what you're going to get when you import it. The other cool thing is that these check marks over here are the same as the visibility properties that you had in Photoshop when you last saved. So let's say you use lots of different artwork, placeholders and graphics that you don't want in your final application. It's really easy just to import everything that you had turned on last. So that's pretty cool. Flexible options of import. If I select a path object, I get a choice. I can bring it as an editable path, which allows me to dynamically bind it to things or edit it or animate it. Or I can just bring it as a flattened bitmap if I don't need that extra capabilities. We have the same kind of features for text. You can bring it as editable text, bind it to dynamic data. Really cool thing. Keep your formatting. Very important. Or I can bring it as a flattened bitmap. And a flattened bitmap would be great, right? Let's say you've created some really cool title text that uses some advanced typography. And it's not supported in Silverlight, but you still want that graphic. You can bring it right in as a bitmap. And that's a really great way to take advantage of that feature. So we saw in our Photoshop file, we had some masks. Well, not only can I bring in the masks that I see in my Photoshop file, I can see my vector masks, I can see my opacity masks, and they all come right into Blend. So my layer masks come in as opacity masks, and my vector masks come in as clipping paths. So we're going to check that out in a second. Another thing I wanted to point out here is this little option, Preserve Pixels on Import. This is going to be your secret to solving the 72 and 96 problem, which I think probably a few of you have run into. This basically says, ignore the resolution in my file. I want my pixel dimensions. And it's going to save them, and you'll be much happier probably at the end of the day for having that. One more feature in this importer I wanted to point out is you all know that designers don't always create their assets organized in a way that's going to map really nicely to your controls. So what we can do is, in this example, I have a button. It has several layers. I really only need one graphic, so I can just merge those up. Merge layers are really going to be handy for another feature that's not yet supported on the runtime, which is blend modes. So if you have blend modes in your Photoshop file, you can bring in those different layers with the blend modes, merge them, and you bring it in with that blend mode applied to those layers that you've merged. So it's a really great way to keep those visuals intact as well there. All right. So that's that. I'm going to just hit OK and bring it in. Now what's also pretty cool about this is it's adding all of the bitmap images into a folder into your project with the same name as the Photoshop file, as well as adding all the objects to your object tree. So here it is. I'm going to blast through this pretty quick. Here's an object I'm going to pick. It's an image, and it has an opacity mask. Pretty cool. Here's another one. This is actually, the image is much larger. And what I can do is, here's my clipping path. I can double click on it and see a different part of that image. Or you know what? I can just manipulate those handles. So you can actually bind that to animation and do all sorts of interesting things with your clipping paths. We saw the gradient in the keynote, so I'm not going to really go over that. And you saw that we can do editable text, so I'm not going to go over that either. OK, so now that you all know pretty much the flexible options that we have for Photoshop, what I want to focus on now is, not only can you bring your assets in and preserve that visual look that you really want, but it's really easy to take that artwork and make it interactive. So I'm going to go ahead and make another new project, make it a Silverlight. And this works in WPF or Silverlight. It's the same. And I'm going to choose Import Adobe File. And I'm going to bring in this other file. I'll pop this up in Photoshop so you can see it. So basically, I've been thinking a lot about snow because we're getting a lot of snow in Redmond. And I'm like, OK, what's the positive of the snow? And the positive of the snow is snowboarding. So I thought, OK, let's make a nice, happy snowboarding snowboarding example of a slider. So you can imagine this is like a ski resort, and they have a slider that's sort of, I want my slopes to fade in and out. So, okay, great. Go in here. I've brought the importer in. You can see it looks just like it does in the Photoshop. Fantastic. I'm happy with the settings that I have, so here I have it. So what I can do is really easily convert this artwork into a working slider. One of the features that we're adding for Blend 3 is a parts list. And I'm going to get to that as soon as I actually convert it into the control. So first I'm going to right-click on it, choose Make into Control, and select a slider. And hit OK. So now I get my parts list. And the parts list is really cool because it tells you, hey, what functionality can I hook up? How can I hook up my artwork? What are the pieces that I can get to make this work like a slider? So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to mark off my little snowboarder guy because he is going to be my thumb. So I mark him off. I'm going to make that column auto size so it fits up nicely. This slider is a horizontal slider, so what I can do is right-click on the top part, choose Horizontal Template. Now I know my snowboarder is what I want to be the thumb. I'm going to right-click on that and choose Horizontal Thumb. That takes me to the template of the thumb. I'm going to pop back out of that. Now there's just one more thing I need to do, is I want to make sure that when I click on the rail that I get that nice increment and decrement behavior. So I don't have any special visuals for that. I just want it to work. So I can just double-click on that part, and it's going to add a default visual for me. So that's great. I'm going to get that functionality. I don't really want the default visual. I just want it to be empty. So I'm going to multi-select both of those, set the opacity to 0. And hopefully, if I set everything out right, when we run it, we'll have a working slider. Yay! Okay, so cool. That only took a couple minutes. My slider works. I'm really happy. Now I want to hook that up to the opacity of my slopes. This is pretty simple, too. So all I have to do here is pop out of my template. Oh. And I don't know. That is not very nice. All right, we're going to skip that part. For some reason, there we go. Now I'm back. All right, preview build. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I want to make the slider work for my slopes. Now, since I want to bind it to the opacity property that only goes from 0 to 1, so I'm just going to change my maximum value on my slider to 1, go up to my slopes graphic, select the opacity property advanced options, go to my element property tab, choose slider, value, hit OK. Now when I run it, my slider's going to work and my slopes are going to fade in and out. Great. All right. So that's pretty much what I was going to talk about with Photoshop. So let's cruise right into Illustrator. So this is a visual that a designer on our team built up, and it's a mandala. And mandalas are used, for a lot of people use them for meditation, to sort of center themselves, and to really, this one is meant to help us feel more creative, to sort of unleash our creative energies. And it looks pretty cool, and I like it, but the experience can really change just with a little bit of animation. So let's have a look at what that artwork looks like with some animation. So now it's rotating. We've got lots of different, I know, isn't that great? Don't you feel more creative already? I mean, I do. I think it's pretty interesting. I've got colors changing, animations. It's actually a really simple animation. I'm sure you guys can make a much better one than that. But what I do want to talk about is just to show you kind of how easy it is to create that kind of experience using Blend. So go ahead, create a new app, change a couple properties here. I'm going to make my background black. I'm going to make the size of my app like 400 by 400 because I want it to fit up my visual. Go to File, Import Illustrator this time. Select my Illustrator file, hit Open, and it comes in. There it is. And they all came in. I wanted to point this out too with Photoshop, by the way, but both the Illustrator and Photoshop, notice all the names are preserved, your layer names. which is really cool. So if you have your naming conventions all set up and you want to make sure, you don't have to do them twice. And that's really helpful for a lot of workflow. So basically, I'm just going to add a quick animation here. I'm trying to see how I'm doing with time. Oh, good. OK. Now, another thing we've added a whole bunch of features in Blend 3 for really targeted at the visual designer. One of those is a workspace. So I'm going to choose my animation workspace for this nice low resolution that we have to work at Mix, so that I can get a nice place that I want to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to control right click, which is also a new feature, good for the visual designer, right on my design surface, choose that. And what I want to do is at the 5th second, I want to rotate about 90 degrees here. So I can rotate, hit my shift key so I get snapping. Then when I hit play, I get my nice animation, yay. But that's not quite all I want. I also want to change some color. So now what I'm going to do is pick my gradient tool, which John showed a little bit of. We made lots of improvements to the gradient tool, which you'll see more in some sessions tomorrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change this last stop to a purple, this one to a blue. And then notice I've got another stop here that I can't quite get at. So I'm just going to zoom right in on it and make that a little darker, a nice blue too. Zoom back out, scrub it, start from the beginning, and play. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about in terms of, the kinds of things that you're going to be able to do in Blend. I mean, it's really cool because I've been working on tools for designers for quite a while now, and what I love about it is that, I'm not a designer myself, but I really love seeing what kinds of cool and really crazy things that people can come up with, really innovative stuff. And I think with these kinds of tools that we're providing for you with Blend 3, I think you're all going to be able to come up with some really amazing things. I'm really looking forward to that, seeing how designers, how you're going to take that impact, take that creativity, and really make applications a lot better. So I'll be available with Pete at 3rd place, and I think we might have 3 minutes for questions now that we can do both. How does that sound? Good? Yay. OK. Questions? Anyone?
Thing translate when you import?
Yeah, we'll be working on some effects. Exactly how far we go with the support on the effects, we're still working out. I mean, it is our goal to be as flexible and to support your workflow as best as possible. So we'll make sure we go as far as we can to make it map to the platform in a really good way.
Yeah, everything, this is wonderful, but my concern is I'm going to go back and start building this, and my developer is going to say, our ZAP file is getting huge. How do we handle what you're doing here and what we saw previously with the XAML that's created and having that downloaded to the client?
Yeah, actually, another set of features that we did make better support for websites. And it's true that people are going to have to be a little bit more careful with their assets. They're going to have to put them as a part of the website as opposed to embedding in the ZAP. We'll have support for that as well. So that'll be the workflow.
John, maybe you might want to mention, so what is a Photoshop layer image saved as?
It's a ping. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a ping.
But all the Illustrator stuff,
that is vector. Yes, and it's coming in as vector. And it would be rather large. That's correct. Well, depending on your artwork, though. Yeah.
Well, going along with that thought is there? Oh, I'm sorry. Were you?
It's the same basic issue with anything you're going to do. Same thing in Flash.
Yeah.
Well, is there specific guidance that you're planning on giving to designers who are used to not having to worry about this? Like, this is how you should kind of structure your Illustrator files so that they don't get blown out of proportion?
Yeah, we're going to do a lot of blogging about best practices, and really we'll give you those tools. Definitely try to guide people so that when they bring them in, that it's a good transition. Yeah.
What kind of effects are supported in the importer tool that Illustrator gives you? Because I know there's a lot of different effects, and I've used the export to XAML plugin for Illustrator before, and so there's some things that kind of get lost in the translation, and I was wondering if this would have kind of the same issue. Like,
This-
what's the overlap in the effects that it supports?
In terms of effects,
In terms of Illustrator effects.
I don't think we really support any effects.
Well, like the blend, like the opacity and blending.
They're all saved ultimately as paths in the
Yeah, yeah. But I mean,
There is, yes, we support Illustrator effects.
in sort of the compatible mode. But
So it just has to be simple.
yeah,
simple.
you know what? Actually, the Illustrator import is exactly this. I don't know if you've used it. The Illustrator import is the same as what's supported in Expression Design. It's the PDF compatible portion. Does that answer? Yeah. No, it's vector. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically just that we're so. I didn't actually hear you because I was faced. So I was just trying to guess what he was saying, but then I thought maybe that's not such a good idea. So, but basically, I think what he was saying is that yeah, it's a sort of a subset of because it's a PDF compatible format that it's still vector, but it's not as there's some of the design, some of the properties in Illustrator aren't going to come in Blend as you'd expect, as you'd want them to. Yeah.
So, can I borrow this?
Yeah, of course.
Is there
I don't know if it's on.
slide?
Here. I'll do the handoff. There you go.
Oh, turn it off. Thank you. Is it on? On? Okay, good. So, some questions about Illustrator specifically. Illustrator has two kinds of effects. There are vector effects and there are bitmap effects. If you apply a bitmap effect to a portion of an Illustrator file, it creates a bitmap result. The Illustrator importer in both Design and in Blend does import directly from the PDF side, if you save as compatible to PDF, and it will save images as images and vectors as vectors. Now, what you can't do is parse those effects out as an Illustrator effect and reapply them. And so that's the part that isn't supported, if that makes sense. Whoever was asking that question. So, all right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So the file gets turned into a PNG file, you said?
For Photoshop? Yeah.
Yeah. Is it actually possible to take a PNG file, say from Fireworks, and will it have all the layers preserved if you import that?
We'll read the standard PNG information. The special information in the PNG from the Fireworks format, we're
Right.
not reading that extra metadata
Okay.
yet. Yeah, think of this, it's really great. Like this, we want to make these import features as flexible and really as robust as possible, and this is just the beginning.
I have actually two really quick questions. One is, I couldn't catch it fast enough. When you import Photoshop files, the layers are in a certain order, but in Blend, it tends to be the other way.
You
How
can
is it
actually
addressed?
change that. I don't know if, this is just, we're actually thinking of relocating this button because nobody knows where it is. See this button here? Oh, well, that didn't help. See this button here? It changes the order.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what's up above? Okay, great. Second question is, currently, when you have either a vector or a raster image in a grid that allows stretching on both ends, your image it's possible to land on a fraction of a pixel, and you get that.
Yeah,
fuzzy
so have
effect.
you played around with the Silverlight layout rounding feature?
No.
So layout rounding will have things snap to pixel boundaries within a layout container. I think it's actually on by default in Silverlight 2.
But I don't work
And
directly
3?
in Silverlight. Does this apply to just regular WPF applications?
Actually, in WPF, they have a snap to device pixels.
Yeah, we tried
property.
that.
And actually, they're going to be implementing the layout rounding as well
Okay.
later.
So
Yeah.
that will
So
definitely
it'll be
catch all.
compatible. Yeah, that'll probably be what you want.
What did you say it was called? Sorry? Device
The pro-
rounding? Yeah, we use that setting.
No,
and it
use
doesn't
layout
address-
rounding is the Silverlight feature. That
Layout
will be in
rounding.
WPF as well.
And this is coming out in Blend 3?
Dev 10.
Oh,
.NET 4.
WPF Dev 10? Oh.
.NET 4, yeah.
Just a quick one. The Photoshop import, it's using Canvas containers or grid containers?
They're in Canvas.
Canvas,
Yeah.
okay.
But you can easily convert them to grid. And another feature of Blend 3 is that we fixed the layout stomping, so we won't blast away all your properties when you change layout type.
This is an import feature, right? So if I'm changing my original Photoshop document, it's not going to detect that I've made a change, and I've got to go through the import process again, right?
Yes, you'll have to go through the process again. We do have a re-import scenario, though. So the good news on that is that once you've chosen and carefully set your settings, when you reopen that dialog, it'll remember all that. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thanks, everybody. Pete and Ella will be